Have you ever felt overwhelmed by your emotions and wished that you could control them better? If so, you are not alone. Emotions are powerful and they can be pretty complex, and sometimes they can get the best of us. And in today's video, we're going to talk about 6 important skills that can help us regulate our emotions. Hi, if you don't know me, I'm Barika from Simply Unique Coaching, and I have been leading for over 15 years and I've led more than 18 teams. And I like to say that I am the leader who learned in the trenches. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the topic of emotional regulation. So, if you don't know what emotional regulation is, it is actually the ability to control and manage our emotions in different situations. And mastering emotional regulation in our lives is going to help us improve our well being, how we feel about ourselves. It's going to help us improve our relationships with other people and our performance at work and in other environments where we need to be our best form of ourselves. Some of the benefits of having really great emotional regulation is going to be having reduced stress, which everyone loves. Like, who wants to be stressed out when you don't have to be, right? We'll also see an increase in happiness and an enhanced resilience. And resilience is that ability to bounce back, that ability to get back up again whenever life knocks us over. So, the first skill to help us with our emotional regulation is going to be self awareness. And when we are self aware, we are able to see how others perceive us and interpret that from the outside looking in. So, it's not just looking from our perspective, but also looking at taking an inventory of who we are, right? And really what our strengths and our weaknesses are, because we all have strengths and weaknesses. Nobody is strong in every area and no one is weak in every area. We have to be balanced, right? And the more that we know where we truly are and we're like sober in our mind of how we think about ourselves, then the better we are going to be and equipped for different situations. And also, when we have self awareness, we can also kind of have a better idea of how other people may perceive our actions or our communication or whatever. So, for instance, if you come from a communication style where you are a direct communicator, you will need to know that someone who is a feeler is not going to receive direct communication well, because those are complete opposites. The feeler is going to need you to get in touch with them to actually get a feeling for how they are and what's going on. But if you go directly to them very frequently and say, I need this, and that, you're going to have a really bad relationship with that kind of employee, or even with that type of coworker, or even that type of boss. Also, we want to be mindful. And this is one that I'm practicing more and more nowadays. But in being mindful, we're actually being completely present in the situation and in the circumstance. We're not thinking about the past. We're not thinking about the future. We're actually right there in that moment. Because I normally have like this never ending to-do list, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to do this, and then next I'm going to do this. I'm always thinking about next, right? Or I traditionally have been that type of person, but I am now focusing on, I am here in this moment and being completely 100% in this moment, and then in the next moment I will be completely 100% in that moment when that moment occurs, right? So that is a part of that mindfulness of actually being present completely and fully in the situation. And like when someone talks to you and then you can tell like their mind is off in la la land, and you're like, That person is not practicing mindfulness." And if you've been guilty of that before, go ahead and raise your hand. But that's something that we can all work on, right? The next one is going to be cognitive appraisal, but I'm going to call it situation interpretation. And so what that is basically, how something can happen to us and our minds will process it, especially based on things that have happened historically or in our past. And sometimes those past events could have been negative. So it will put a negative interpretation on the current event, right? And sometimes that's not the case. So when we are paying attention to this particular area, what we're doing is we're saying, okay, you know what? I can't really necessarily see this situation through that filter. I might need to assume positive intent. Maybe the person didn't mean to say things to me the way that they did or in that tone. Maybe it was the way I heard it. Maybe, it could have sounded rough, but maybe they had a scratchy throat. Who knows? Or maybe if they may have lashed out at you, and maybe saying, okay, taking a step back and saying, okay, I don't think they're upset with me. Maybe they have something else going on in their own life. Maybe they have a family member that may not be feeling well, or maybe they just found out some really terrible news, or, something happened that caused them to react like that, and kind of giving people the benefit of the doubt. Now, again, if you see people with a certain habit, then sometimes you have to address it. But even with that, sometimes, if when we mature to a certain extent and in certain situations, we can say, you know what, this person, they had a rough childhood, not to say that that excuses it, but they had a really rough childhood. So the way that they may respond to someone in authority is not necessarily proper. However, if you're willing to work with that person to help them get to more of a stable, more of an even keel response, then you can help coach them in that and just help encourage them and be there for them. So that's just another way for that situational interpretation. Sometimes our filters are wrong. And we have to know that sometimes our filters are wrong. And have you ever had a conversation with someone and maybe years later, maybe you've had a falling out with someone and years later you come back together and talk with them, or maybe a couple weeks later you come back and talk to them and you realize, oh, what happened from your perspective and what happened from my perspective were totally different. And now that I understand your perspective, I totally get it. And I see that I was wrong. Has that ever happened to you before? Because I know it's happened to me before. And that's what's actually made me a lot more understanding with people because I realized what makes sense to me doesn't make sense to everyone else. And everyone is different. And because everyone is different, it is actually an immature perspective to think that everyone thinks from your perspective because that's not reality. The world does not revolve around us. And unfortunately, in society, sometimes people grow up thinking that it does. There's sometimes situations happen where we think it does, but really it doesn't. And when we become more aware of the people in our community and on our jobs and in our lives, then it actually helps us to be a little bit more sensitive and more cognitive. Not to say that you have to deny your own needs, but to say, I will be a little bit more self aware and I will make sure that I don't falsely throw something on someone or incorrectly throw something on someone that doesn't really apply. So the next one is going to be value engagement. And value engagement is just basically how we can ensure that we are aligning with our company's goals and their strategies and with the needs and the expectations of our customers, the employees, and any other stakeholders. And it just really helps us to create value for everyone who is involved and making sure that we can create a situation where there is loyalty and trust being built, and that really helps to make a better situation for everyone. So we want to make sure that we are basically providing value, right? And that we are helping others and adding to them and benefiting them. Now, if we're really good at this, we're going to see customer satisfaction, we're going to see customer retention, we're going to see employees who want to be at work and they enjoy working with us and they are productive, they're making progress, they're moving forward. We'll also see an enhancement in innovation. We'll see ideas popping and people thinking of creative ways to get things done, which I absolutely love seeing. I hate to see the stifling of ideas and creativity. That's just no bueno for any type of organization. And we'll also see it in the bottom line, right? In the dollars, in the sense of the company. So next, let's talk about emotional expression. And this is how we express our emotions. So you know how some people just wear their emotions on their face, right? And then some people are a little bit harder to read. And it's not saying that you want to necessarily make it so that you're hard to read, but you want to make sure that you are expressing your emotions in a way that is appropriate. And again, we have to keep in mind that there are different cultures, that there are different personality types, that there are different circumstances and situations. And so the way that we express our emotions needs to be appropriate for the environment that we're in. Like, so the way that I might express my emotions when I'm at work may be a little bit more composed than maybe if I'm hanging out with a group of friends, right? So I might be a little bit more animated or whatnot because it's a different environment and it's more appropriate for me to be a little bit more animated and all of that at work. Whereas, I mean, with my friends, whereas at work, it's better to be a little bit more composed when you have your customers and your clients and all of your coworkers and employees that you're working with. And we're coming down to the last one. But before I mention it, I want you to drop in the comments which one of these do you tend to use the most? Which one of these can you resonate with the most and you find to be really, really helpful to you as a person with helping you to regulate your emotions? Which ones do you use? Drop it in the comments. Now, let's talk about number 6. So, number 6 is impulse control. And impulse control is just the ability to resist or delay an urge, a temptation, or an impulse that may actually be harmful to oneself or to others, or it just may not be beneficial. Maybe it's not necessarily harmful, but it's just not beneficial. And when we have impulse control, it actually helps us to make better decisions, right? And it can help us to avoid falling into some types of negative consequences. And it will also help us to achieve our goals, which is so important because that is why we are here. We're here to achieve our goals, to make a difference in the world, and to make the world a better place. So here are some examples of someone using impulse control, like they may wait their turn before interrupting. Maybe they're saving money for a future purchase. And instead of spending it impulsively, they might also decide to get on that to do list instead of procrastinating. And then also apologizing for a mistake instead of blaming another person. Okay. I hope that you found these to be really helpful. And if you're a leader and you want to know more about emotional intelligence, which actually all of these things kind of apply to, I want you to watch the video I'm going to link here. And that is actually what I teach. And this is why I am successful as a leader. I'm telling you, I'm telling you, I'm telling you. I really never applied for a leadership position and said, hey, I want to be in charge. Like people just reach out to me and they're like, hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do that? And I want to share with you what I have learned, what has helped me to build successful teams and help me to build teams that like working with me and enjoy working with me, even in some of the toughest situations that I've encountered. And I've had a couple of tough ones. But at the end of the day, before I left the company, we were in good standing. So I hope you have a great day. And with that being said, take care.